Hey there, Dearborn Christian Fellowship. Pastor Brad here. Happy New Year. Welcome back to Pursuing Christ Together in these videos. I had a couple weeks off of videos as we were away for a week in Florida after Christmas and into the new year. And so I'm glad to be back with you and making these videos again on Friday afternoons and sending to you on Monday morning so that we can kick off our week together pursuing Christ. Making him the greatest treasure of our life, as I encouraged you at the end of yesterday's service. Are you pursuing him above all else? Is he the greatest treasure of your heart? Do you love him? Do you live for his glory? Do you pursue him more than the other good things that we have in this life? And so we want that to be true of us. We want that to mark us as a church, to be a church that pursues Jesus throughout our week. And so I'd encourage you this week to be doing that in the Word. The Scriptures are the place where God speaks to his people. And so put yourself in a place where you can hear God's voice. And that does not happen apart from hearing the scriptures read, hearing the Holy Spirit apply those things to your life. That is the place where God speaks. And so put yourself in those places. And as we kick off a new year, if you haven't already, develop a plan, okay? A lot of times the plans that we make fail, but we've never obtained a plan or obtained a goal that we didn't make a plan for, right? So plan to spend time with God and his word this year. Plan to set aside time for the Lord each day. Figure out what that looks like for you, and maybe even use a reading plan to read through the scriptures. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago on Sunday morning, we have those plans at the Connection Center. Use one. And don't feel like you have to tie yourself to like a specific time frame. Like, I'm going to read through the whole Bible in a year. That can be good, and that's good. And as Tom mentioned in his sermon a couple weeks ago, like, he did that for a lot of years, and many people do that. But don't feel tied to a calendar. I'd encourage you. Read through it and read through it slowly. Maybe do less reading than what each day has. To get through it in a whole year, it's a lot. It's a lot, and you can do it, and it's great to do it. But maybe you plan to read the whole New Testament in a year. Challenged a friend of mine to do that recently, or read through sections of the Old Testament this year. But have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're not going to obtain a goal, because there will be no means to get there. So develop the plan and then give yourself grace along the way. But let's be intentional to pursue Christ this year throughout his word, and that's my encouragement to you as we start off with these videos in 2025. It's still weird to say 2025, is it not? Always takes a while. Okay, so we are continuing to work through the Apostles' Creed, and then we'll move into the Nicene Creed. It's taken a while, obviously, because we're not in a rush, so we're just kind of going slow. And again, today we'll do one line. And I always have to mark it so I know where I left off the week before. And we are in the second section of the Apostles' Creed, which pertains to the second person of the Trinity, namely Jesus the Christ, who was born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and buried. He descended to hell. We talked about what that means. The third day he rose again from the dead. And last time, excuse me, last time we talked about the line, he ascended to heaven. This time we talk about the line, and is seated at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. So he ascended to heaven, and when he got there, he is seated at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. Why say that? Several reasons. The first word that I think is important there is the word seated. When do you sit? You sit when your work is done, right? You get home after a long day at work, and you sit at the dinner table, sit on the couch, get a book, turn on a show. Your work for that day, or at least the work you got paid for, is done. You sit. You've completed the job, the task. Jesus, in ascending back to his Father in heaven, has completed the mission and the work that his Father gave him to do, and he sat down as the victorious high priest priest upon his throne, having accomplished everything that his Father sent him into the world to do. He is seated at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. And that's an important visual. Now, in Acts, I don't know if you remember, but in Acts 7, when Stephen had given his speech and he gets stoned and he's in the process of dying and he looks up and he sees Jesus, that the clouds open, he sees the Son of Man standing. Jesus stood in that moment to welcome Stephen into his eternal home. But the normal posture of Christ in heaven is one of being seated, because the work that he was sent to the earth to accomplish has been fulfilled. He's at the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. That is the place of honor. In the scriptures, the right hand of the Father is the place of honor, of reverence, of majesty, of glory. And that is the place that Jesus has earned because of his active and passive righteousness that he obtained in his life and in his ministry. Active righteousness meaning his obedience to everything his Father commanded him to do. Passive obedience in his death, that he simply absorbed the wrath of God poured out on him for the sin of those who would trust in him as that atoning sacrifice, which hopefully those words are a little bit richer for you after yesterday and what the whole burnt offering signifies in Leviticus 1. But he is seated at the place of glory and honor because he has earned that through his active and passive righteousness. The other reason why this line gets included in the Apostles' Creed and is so foundational is because it alludes to what Jesus is now doing. Like, yes, his work is done, but he's not simply kicking his feet up in that sense and just watching. No, he, as the book of Hebrews makes clear, is now our great high priest who is interceding on our behalf. Hebrews 8, and we'll hear Hebrews probably throughout all of Leviticus. Hebrews is like the New Testament version of Leviticus and kind of makes clear a lot of the things that are laid out in Leviticus in a shadowy form. Hebrews kind of gives definition to those shadows and helps us to see the realities of what those things are pointing to. So here's Hebrews 8:1. Now the point in what we are saying, and there's a lot of what the author of Hebrews was saying leading up to this, which I'm not going to mention, but the point of what we were saying is this: we have such a high priest, one who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in heaven, a minister in the holy places, in the true tent that the Lord has set up, not man. Jesus is our great high priest, doing the work of ministry, ministering for us, ministering to us, ministering on our behalf, because we have been through faith united to him. And so he intercedes for us before the Father, declaring us not guilty. This one's mine, I claim him, my righteousness counts for him. He helps us in our temptations. He helps us with words to pray. He can identify with us because he lived a life that we can live. So we have one to go to when we are tempted to sin and when we are discouraged. He lived the life that we live. And so he knows how to help those who are in moments of weakness and trial. You can go to him. While he has left the earth, he has not left his people. He is our great high priest, sitting down at the right hand of the Father in heaven, ministering to us as we need. And so I hope that's an encouragement to you that Jesus, though he ascended, has not abandoned his people. In fact, it's the reason why you can go to God continually through him, the one who is your mediator, the one who is your great high priest, whose name is love, whoever lives and pleads for us. So love that line, love the picture of Jesus. Don't forget what he's doing. The Holy Spirit is now dwelling in the hearts of his people, and the second person of the Trinity is actively ministering on our behalf before the Father in heaven. Hope that encourages you in this day and in this week. Have a great week loving and serving your King, and I'll see you on Sunday.